You're listening to a podcast from The Word.
Brilliant to see you all, and welcome to another live recording of The Word in Your Ear podcast at 21 Soho. Both David and I were in the music press in the late 70s, and I'm here to tell you that it was an absolute journalistic field day, because every single second something absolutely stunning seemed to be happening in the punk rock frontline. And reading this great book, Life's a Gamble, just really reminded us of the whole thing. And it's a fantastic book. It's full of press cuttings, full of ephemera, full of memorabilia, and most importantly, it's full of very, very brilliantly remembered and vivid and very emotional stories of life on the inside. And so please welcome and give an enormous round of applause for its author, Pauline Murray.
So, Pauline, first question, which we've rather teed up, haven't we, with it. You started writing this book for your children, is that right?
Well, that's what you said, yeah. But,
well, that's what he said in the book.
I did say that.
It says in the intro.
Yeah, it is in the intro, yes. I had no intention of writing a book seriously, but a few years ago I thought, you never know what your parents did, and then they die and you forget to... You think, I wish I'd asked them this or this, because you have no clear idea of their lives or the timeline of their lives. So I just did it as a stream of thought thing out of my memory, and I got up to the point where the band reformed, and then I just left it. I never came back to it. And then, not last year, the year before, Russ, who does all the layouts for the book, he approached Omnibus, unbeknown to me, and proposed that I do an autobiography, and they said, yes, we really want to. And I thought, wow, that's amazing. And I thought, oh my God, what are we going to do, But I agreed to do it. So all that first lot of writing that I did, I had to, more or less redo it all, because your memory just is not very reliable. And when you're doing a book seriously, when it's going to be published and that, you got to try and, nail it, if you like.
Right.
So I had to do quite a lot of research. The early chapters, chapter 1 and 2, I talk a lot about family history, because I had researched family history a few years earlier, and I did feel that that my ancestors needed to be in that book, that I needed to tell their story first, because your ancestors lead into you, and the different times that they live in. And
so tell us a bit about where you came from, or where your family came from, or what was that background?
Well, they all came from West Durham, basically. I'm totally West Durham born and bred, which is very strange that I should find myself sitting here on a stage and doing everything that I've done, But my dad was a coal miner. His father was from a blacksmith's family. So basically, in an area like that, there's not a lot of opportunities, and whatever time you're born into, that's the sort of trade that you adopt, whether it's a blacksmith earlier when they needed to shoe horses, or whether the coal mines opened, it's the only form of employment. So my dad was a coal miner.
And your mum was a singer, wasn't she? She did a trio with your sister, her sisters?
Like when she was young, she was from a family of 7. There was 10 of them, but then 3 didn't make it. But they were very musical. The dad used to get them to... He would get one to go to dancing lessons and another to piano lessons, and they would sing in harmony. And around about the age of 14, they used to, during the Second World War, would go around and entertain the troops as part of an entertainment sort of thing that went on at the time. So she was quite active singing and loved singing at that sort of age. But then as she got a bit older, then you're tied into trying to get a job, or then you meet the man at the local dance, and then you get married, and then you have kids. That was the track that most people take in places like that. So she was never really able to fulfill beyond that. But they were musical, you know. Could sing in harmony just like as a natural thing. It didn't have to think about it.
When did you start singing? What was your first experience of singing?
Well, according to my family, I could sing before I could talk, but my daughter was like that as well. But I didn't. I think my sister said that my mum used to get me to sing, like to the family and stuff. But I don't remember any of that. But the first I remember singing was when I was about 13, and I got an acoustic guitar. And there was a couple of girls at school also had acoustic guitars, so we would get together on a lunchtime and we learnt Leaving on a Jet Plane.
Oh, very good.
With the harmonies.
Absolutely. Because it's number one for ages, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Leaving on a
great
Jet Plane.
song, Leaving on a Jet Plane. It's
Absolutely.
like your dream, isn't it, just to take off and leave.
Yeah.
But anyway...
well, we've got a picture of Fluff Freeman, Alan Freeman behind us. We're running some slides while we're recording this.
Right.
And you write about the music you heard listening to his show.
Pig of the Pops.
I think the Pig of the
Yeah,
Pops.
was it on a Sunday?
Sunday evening, and it used to be immediately followed by Sing Something Simple.
I remember that one, yes.
With the Cliff Adams.
Yes, I remember it well.
That's right.
I mean, in our house, you know, we didn't have a record player when I was, like, between the age of up to 10 or whatever. They just used to play the radio, you know, and it was... like terrible things like Billy Cotton's bands, you know, like all these like really old-fashioned musical things. But then when the 60s came along, everything exploded on the radio, you know. So we didn't have a record player until later. So the radio really was your point of contact for the new music coming out. So you would listen to the chart rundown, and all your favourite records would get played, and it was a surprise to you because it wasn't like now when you know what was number one. And I think was it the point where they announced the numbers? Do you know what I mean?
Be a mystery
and then Top of the Pops would probably, you know, they probably would have known by the time the Thursday came. But I think was it a surprise when they did the rundown of what the chart placings were. It was number one, and I don't know. It was just, you know, the way that you got your music basically was off the radio.
But then you got a record player later on. We're looking here. We've got a kind of montage of a bunch of records that you particularly liked in that time. You were a fan of Carole King's Tapestry, is that right?
Yes, I did like Carole King's Tapestry, and I still do. So you know that's all right.
No, absolutely. No. Hey,
it's not a guilty pleasure. It's
certainly not.
I think, you know...
Gilbert O'Sullivan was in there.
It'd be about 13, 14 when Nothing Rhymed. You know, I used to like that. I quite liked, you know, good songs with a bit of emotion in them. And at the time, you know, of Carole King in the early 70s... You know, I didn't totally know her background, but I knew a lot of her songs from the 60s that she'd written or co-written. So she was probably already in there. And I think, you know, as a female, she held her own
definitely.
In her music career as a writer and everything. I didn't know that at the time, but I did.
Were you a
like
T-Rex fan?
I wasn't a T-Rex teeny sort of mania, you know, putting it on my bedroom wall or anything like that. But I did have Ride a White Swan and Hot Love and...
Right. Where did you buy records? Can you remember?
Well... the first ones I bought, I didn't really have to buy many because I had a boyfriend who bought tons. So I heard everything. But personally, I didn't buy many. But I did buy from Bishop Auckland, which is like Nowheresville. But there was a record shop called Brotherton's, and I bought... Is it Every Day's Tuesday by Chairman of the Board? Right. That was one. And the Paul McCartney one... Another Day.
Oh, right.
It's just another day, that one. Yeah. And Jimi Hendrix, Voodoo Child, because it was like on offer, cheap. It's like, I bought, but I didn't have to buy records because I had an older boyfriend who was absolutely addicted to buying records. Right. So I heard so much of his. I heard everything that he bought. So.
But you're right about the various kind of musicals. People like Tim Curry as Frank-N-Furter, and also Liza Minnelli in Cabaret. So was something about the clothes that they were wearing was clearly very appealing.
Well, that was a certain point in time, wasn't it? Yeah. You know, I mean, you can take any point in time and you can see what the influences were that were happening at the time. Like, say, for instance, Clockwork Orange. You could even pick that. You could, and Cabaret was film of the time, and the Rocky Horror Show. But what they were sort of precursors to punk in the way that it all looked, the heavy makeup. So it was a taster of things to come. Nothing arrives without being connected to something beforehand. And that was just a point in time in the early to mid 70s of popular culture, if you like.
So you got around, you saw quite a lot. I mean, there's pictures in your book, which is, you know, one of the things that's fantastic about the book is it's a picture book as well as everything else. You got pictures of you with Steve Harley, haven't
yes.
you?
I know.
A young fan.
I'm just amazed that a picture like that exists. My sister said, here's a picture of you and with Steve Harley. I couldn't believe it existed.
How did it happen?
How did it happen?
Yeah.
Well, me and my boyfriend used to follow Cockney Rebel. We were followed them around on tour and stuff. Not everywhere, but, you know, saw them a lot of times. We really liked the first album. Thought it was really different musically. It had something different about it. He had quite a good attitude, and we latched onto them, and we used to go and see lots of gigs. Obviously, got backstage and had a picture.
But you came down to London as well, didn't you?
We went all over the place.
Did you see Bruce Springsteen at the Hammersmith Odeon?
Yes, I was there that night. I was very lucky because the boyfriend who was older than me, he had a job. I was still at school.
Right.
And he was absolutely tuned into like the next thing that was coming along, and he bought the tickets, and we used to just sleep out on the railway station, and you know, we'd get the coach down. And
how did your parents feel about this?
They were actually all right. I sometimes think about this. Would you allow your 14-year-old to go and see Lou Reed at Crystal Palace while I was 14?
My God.
Yes. Would you allow your 14-year-old daughter to do that? And they did.
So did you know you were sleeping out on railway stations and stuff like that?
Well, I don't know whether they knew about that, but they trusted the lad that I was with because I got with him very early on, and they did have a word with his parents and say, you do realise how young I was. But it was the music that we were interested in. We were like really following our music, basically. And they did allow me to do these things. They allowed me to go and see bands when I was doing my O-levels and stuff like that. You know, I mean, they weren't strict, which in some ways is really good. And
we're looking at a picture at the moment, well, a number of pictures, but there's one wonderful one taken of you at home when you're clearly under the influence of David Bowie.
Yes.
Tell us about that look. It's very impressive look, isn't it? So you're how old there?
14 maybe. 15, 14.
Right.
14.
So you've had your hair cut in quite a radical fashion.
Yeah.
Major application of mascara.
Yes, all of that, yeah.
So did you get looked at in the street when you were, you know, just wandering around your locality?
Probably, yeah. I mean, I looked like worse than that sometimes, you know. That's quite smart, really, but...
No, it's a very good look, but it would have been...
Well, I think we were quite different for our locality, which was a northeast mining village, and that's not the sort of thing you do. But we sort of led a life that sort of didn't really integrate with that. We were just going to see bands. And,
so what did the locals think of you? You think those exotic creatures who waft in and out of town?
No, I don't know what they thought of us, you know. When the punk time came, you know, people like Gary and that would get chased down the street. They didn't like anyone that was a bit different, you know. Everybody fits in that sort of place, because if you don't fit in, you really stand out. But I don't know, we just used to get on with it, and we didn't really integrate too much to the point of getting thrown out of the place or anything.
Right.
You know?
Well, we've got another picture here of you. This is you watching the Sex Pistols, I think in Leeds. Was it in Leeds?
It was on the Anarchy tour, so it was in Leeds.
And you can spot Pauline just to the left of those
bottom
two
right
fingers.
Yeah. It's such a funny picture, because we were talking about this morning that half the audience has been made up of photographers, actually.
Yeah.
And also it's that thing that everyone imagines. If you see documentaries about punk rock, it's all safety pins and bin liners.
No,
it's not
there's a
really.
lot of long
That's
hair
just
and flares,
curious,
isn't there? You know?
long-haired people they probably went to see.
In the book, there's a photo of the Electric Circus when we supported Buzzcocks in '77, and Russ, the guy who was, you know, doing all the layouts, he insisted on putting that photo. It was quite expensive photo, but it's the crowd around the building. And it's fascinating because a lot of them have got long hair and flares. There's kids running around. It's not what you would think of as a punk audience. It's very much of its time, because when it first started, we were still very much into that 70s look.
Yeah.
Our manager, you know, he had the long hair, the tash, the waistcoat, the stripy shirt, the loons, you know. That was like a crossover point. It was still very much there, you know, when it first started.
So tell us about Penetration coming together. Did that all happen quite quickly?
It started off as just a hobby. It started off as something to do. You know, we didn't really have any grand plan about it. There was a few of us in that mining village who were a bit different and who were into music, so you naturally gravitate to people like that. And Gary Chaplin was one of those people. He liked T-Rex, he liked Cockney Rebel, and he played guitar. And in 1976, I mean, I was still going to see bands, and I had seen the Pistols earlier that year, and you know, we had been introduced to Patti Smith, to television, all the New York stuff, and then smaller venues were starting to take on bands like Eddie and the Hot Rods. The pub rock thing had been Dr. Feelgood, but Dr. Feelgood were doing big venues. They were doing City Hall size venues. But then we started to see the Damned and in small venues near where we lived. And I think we thought, yeah, we can do that. And we just got together once a week and thrashed out some cover versions to start with.
What were your cover versions?
Well, the cover versions...
and stuff like that,
yeah, it was a Jonathan Richman Roadrunner. It was Pills by the New York Dolls. It was Patti Smith's version of Gloria. I think there might have been a Ramones song in there. Easy things to play, you know, and rock out to. And we started, you know, putting cover versions together. And then as the year turned, we started writing our own stuff and started trying to get supports with people locally. And it all went on from there, really.
You've got extraordinary, you know, scrapbooks of old, you know, tickets and flyers and so forth. Who did you tell us some of the groups you supported?
Well, I think the first one was Slaughtering the Dogs, and Doctors of Madness we supported, and Generation X, and Elvis Costello, and
the early Joy Division, didn't you support, I think?
No, they supported us.
They supported you?
They were called Warsaw. We invited them to support us. Adverts we supported. Joy Division were Warsaw, and we used to go to Manchester because it was quite near to where we lived. It was 3 hours rather than 7 hours to London. And we used to play with the Fall and that. And then it was Jubilee, 1977, and our manager at the time put an event on. So it was the Adverts and us, and a band called Harry Hack, and a band called Warsaw. And then, obviously, they went on to become Joy Division. Musically, at that time, there were nothing like Joy Division, so they had some type of big turnaround in the musical style. So, very early days.
You kept a diary in those early days, didn't you?
Well, I did for 1978, which is amazing because it was our sort of biggest year of penetration, and I filled it in every single day. I don't know how I managed to do it because we were so busy, and it was very honest. It was...
So in what way honest? You were talking about times that didn't work out so well.
Everything was like, well, they were crap, and the audience were terrible tonight, and I enjoyed tonight. Oh, these people are ignorant, and they were spitting like morons.
I was going to ask you about
it was all of that sort of stuff.
Because that's an extraordinary thing, reading in the book about you forget that, people used to gob.
Horrible.
And
horrible.
It seems absolutely repulsive now.
It is repulsive. It was repulsive then.
It
was terrible. Yes. What do you want to know about the gobbing?
And you couldn't appeal to people to stop, it wouldn't?
No. If you asked them to stop, they did it more. So I realised that very early on that like if you told them to stop, they did it more. So you just didn't say anything about it. You just dodged about. It was disgusting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what about the business? Female lead singers tended to get individual attention. As we're looking at a cover of the NME from 1978, November of 1978, and it's penetration, but it's you on the cover. How did that go down in the band?
I don't know. You'd have to ask them, wouldn't you?
Right. Okay.
But it wasn't up to me, and right from the start. I mean, I don't know whether it's a thing that the lead singer gets pulled out, whether it's male or female. I'm not sure whether that's a thing. But I had absolutely no control over that. A review would come up and it would be a picture of me, or sometimes it would be me and Gary, the guitarist. But it was something that I had no control over, so I don't know what the band thought of that, whether they felt a bit threatened of it or jealous, or I don't know.
But the rock press was so important at that time, wasn't it?
Absolutely.
You mentioned various things. And you could probably still remember those reviews. You quote, I think Sounds calls you a she-vixen of a singer.
Yes.
And says you're Patti Smith with singing lessons. And then I think the enemy says that you're deafeningly awful.
Yes.
It must have been so heartbreaking to read things like that.
The reviews, I mean, at the time, I mean, the music papers were really important because it was the only window into it all, and they were really important that they could make or break people. It was that important of what they had to say about you, and the journalists themselves were important, whether it was, this journalist or that one, and what they had to say about you, whether they were cool or whether they weren't. And we used to, the reviews would come in, and you'd think, well, we'll manage to get through that one all right. But the one when it said we were definitely awful, it was a full page. And the guy, I bumped into him a few years later, and, I called him out and I said, I don't know what you're doing here, and he reckoned that he'd given lots of good reviews that week, and he was told by the editor that he had to give a bad one. I don't know. It was the journalist.
Did you let him off? That doesn't sound.
No, I didn't let him off.
By that.
I'm not very forgiving, I have to say. If someone steps over the line with me, it takes a lot for me to forgive them. No, I didn't. But they were really important, and some of them were ferocious. Reviewers like Jane Suck, people feared it. She was just so. Extreme. I mean, you hadn't had that in the music papers before punk either. These reviewers who were punk reviewers, really.
No,
like,
absolutely.
Really
No,
nasty,
definitely.
horrible, you know.
So was there a sense of sisterhood with the other kind of girl singers at the time? We're just looking
Not
at a picture
really.
now. Chrissy Hunt, not really, no.
Well, I never really mingled with people because
Yeah.
you're doing your own thing. And I have to say, you know, we played with the Adverts a lot in the early days, and I'm still very good friends with Gaye, and she's a really nice person. But I didn't really meet the others, you know. I saw Polystyrene once with X-ray specs at the Man in the Moon, but I didn't meet her. I didn't really meet Chrissy Hind. Susie, I was on the bill with quite a few times, and she just didn't even want to like say hello. So I didn't really feel that much affinity with the other girls. I didn't feel particularly like a girl. I just thought I'm a member of a band and I'm doing what I do. I didn't really make much of my own
that's a good point.
girlhood. I just thought I was a member of the band and with the guys. I didn't think, oh, I'm a female and you know, I better like get with the other females. It wasn't that sort of thing. Not for me, anyway.
One of the most striking pictures in the book, I'm delighted you put it in, is your wedding picture.
Oh,
So this is
look
in
at
the
that.
midst of... so
Oh,
what
absolutely.
year is this?
This is 1978.
This is... So you're on the
In the
cover...
whole, in the massive, yeah.
Just been supporting the Stranglers one night, and then
I'll
the
just
next.
get married in amongst all this, shall I? No, my God. Deeply regretted it, you know. I signed the contract like I signed record contracts without even thinking. Anyway, yeah, this was March 1978.
So how old were you when you were there?
20.
Right.
But I'd known Peter since I was 12.
Right.
Which is really stupid to go ahead and get married, especially at that time when all that was going on. But I'm really surprised I could find a picture of that. I thought I'd lost that. That's the only picture I have.
Well, we're very glad you did.
Well, I found it by chance,
It's
just
a
in
brilliant
time. I
document.
thought, should I put that in or should I not? I thought, that's a timepiece, isn't it?
It really
You know,
is.
the
It's the
70s.
combination of formal wear and
The 70s.
and the chap on the right who, you know, looks as if he wandered in from the vibrators or something. Just happened to be passing.
Yes, yeah, it's a strange photo.
I'm delighted you put it in there. I just want to... Another thing I'm particularly delighted you put in here. This is a very rare case that we can share with people a band's profit and loss account for the period 18th February 1978 to 5th of November 1979, during which this penetration took in 40 grand from sundry tours. That's what came in. They ended up, spending more than that in the expenses.
Yeah, that included 2 advances for 2 albums.
Right.
Our first and second album are included in the income, which comes as 93,058 at the top. Then you look at the expenses, you know, what the management took, and 26 studio recording cost 26,000.
Postage, stationery, and telephone.
Yeah,
It's all there.
Yeah, that's not
Tour
much,
cost,
is it?
incredible.
But,
Tour cost, 23,000. Amazing. But it's just so astonishing. And after 18 months and all that amount of money that you'd earned.
That's just the first page, that, you know.
Yeah. So
It
you
goes on to
finished
the
up with a
second page.
net loss at the end of it, and
Absolutely.
therefore left in debt to Virgin, presumably.
Not to Virgin particularly, although I think we still could be in debt to Virgin, because every time I get a statement, it doesn't change. It still hangs around 36,000. Funnily enough,
you get a statement. Sorry, take me through this. You get a statement. What, twice a year? Is that how it works?
if you're very lucky, you might get one every 5 years or something. But anyway, it comes up as 36.
The penetration
It's
somehow earned
unrecouped.
this, yeah.
That's unrecouped royalties, isn't it, when it's a Virgin thing? And funnily enough, I saw an interview with another band that were on Virgin, and he mentioned exactly that same figure. So
They have a standard letter they send to everybody.
Just cut and paste.
Yeah, they ripped everyone off to the same amount.
Yeah.
But this
Skids.
this is management and band costs, you know. We were really stupid, you know. We signed things that we didn't even get looked at, you know.
But presumably people back home or wherever thought, oh, you're on the telly, you're in
Well, everybody
music
thinks
papers.
that, don't they? Everybody thinks
you're living
that.
high on the hog.
Yeah, everyone thinks that, don't they?
So it must have been the case for quite a lot of groups that they finished up in debt.
I would have thought so, unless they had some big hits. Unless they sort of started in the 80s. But I think the ones in the 70s were massively taken advantage of. I think it was a different type of business. It was... Well, I don't know. I don't think it was the business...
But when the group split up, then was there a part of you just thought, I'm not sure I should keep going because you go on and it's the Invisible Girls and stuff like that. There must be a point where you thought, is this going to be worth it?
Well, I did get to that point at the end of 1979 where we'd done 2 albums. The albums had done well. We were doing really well as a live band. We were like right on the top end of it all, getting big crowds, and we were still on like 30 quid a week. We were still like never had any money and worked to death. We never had a minute off. And then what happens is you get very tired as you're doing shows every single night. And we did a tour of America. We came back, we did our 2nd album, and the guitarist, the one that looks like he wandered in from the Vibrators, he said he wanted to leave. And I thought, you know what, I've had enough of this myself. I'm absolutely sick of this. And we split up at the end of that tour, and that was it. Right. Dropped everyone off and never saw them again.
Oh, really? Was it like that?
Yeah, I mean, we didn't have any animosity, but...
Drop you off?
See you later. See you in 10 years.
Are there members of that group that you hadn't seen for... Well, obviously there's a reunion, but there's no one you haven't seen ever again.
I've seen them all again, but...
Right.
You know.
But it must be really odd to go from having that really close relationship, you're all in the back of a van or whatever.
Well, you say it's a really close relationship and you are all in the back of a van and you're all going through the same experience, but as it goes along, everybody's little habits start to get on your nerves and you all get on each other's nerves. The management tries to divide things up and stir up trouble and you're in a very stressful situation, really. And eventually, you know, you just... Would you know these people if you weren't, like, in that position? You know...
But isn't this the story of every group?
Absolutely.
On every level.
You can barely name any group that are still the same members that they started, and I looked into this, and it's U2. Yeah. And the other one was...
REM was... well, go on.
Yeah, but they're not now. But the guys, ZZ Top, one of them's dead now. But they were the only other band that I could find that had actually stayed together in an original lineup from the beginning. Very rare. In fact, bands go about now, they have no members from the original lineup. Right. So...
But Penetration came back together again in eventually. This is 2006. We're looking at
2001 or something like that. Okay, I did the Invisible Girls thing after that. Right, and went and did that, and then I gave music up for 20 odd years. I just didn't want to do it. I just thought that's such a... I don't know. You can't work it out. It's not like a normal thing. It's all based around many factors that you can't put your finger on. It's not like reality, really. It is, but it isn't, you know. And I just got out of it all. I thought I need to, like, have some reality here. I need to be able to make a living that I know I can make, that there's not someone, like, taking it all away. Like, the minute you're making it, you never see it. And so I didn't do anything in music particularly for 23 years. I just took a back seat. I set up a business which was related to music, rehearsal studios, had kids, and just got out of it all. And then,
what was it like to get back into it again then?
Well, funnily enough...
It's just like a sort of punk package tour, isn't it, that you were on?
Well, what happened was I was never interested in reforming it. I just didn't see the point, and I didn't even think I could sing those songs again. They're like songs from when you're young and a different time. And the old Vibrators person got in touch and wanted to do a gig in Newcastle and London. I said, I'm not interested in reforming the band to do 1 or 2 gigs. I knew that you can't go out there like really bad, you've got to be as good as you were, if not better. I mean, it's a tall order. You're not going to go out there and like be like really bad.
And it's just as much work for one gig,
it's
really,
just
as it
as
is for a
much
tour,
work.
isn't it?
Yeah, I said no, I'm not doing that. And the drummer got in touch the same week, totally separate. I thought, is the universe trying to tell me something here? I thought I better take note of this. And I thought I'll give it a try. If I like it, I'll do it. If I don't like it, I'll never do it again. That'll be it. And we did get together, and a couple of the members didn't carry on with it, but we got enough songs ready to be in a position to do live performances. We got a set together just by rehearsing once a week, and then once you do that, you pulled back in, aren't you? It's like, oh, well, let's do a gig. Well, let's do another one. And then before you know it, you pulled back in, but it's a different timeline. Now you're, what they call them, heritage bands and all that. Yeah. Whatever phrase they have for it, you're coming in on a different timeline. It's like, well, where did Penetration sit in 2001 But we did it because I was enjoying singing again. So we did it for that, and we didn't go into the business with managers and all that. We just did it ourselves. We all had lives outside of it, so it just had to fit with that. So it was done in a different way, We're outside of it all, and it doesn't matter.
At some stage, you must have had a conversation with your children about, kind of what did I do before you came along, kind of thing. Did you? Whether they grew up aware that you'd been in a band or not?
No, I mean, I had rehearsal studios, so they knew I was involved in music, and they, from the day they were born, they were like taken to the rehearsal studios if I was busy, and so they knew that there was music and all of that, bands and everything. But they didn't realise till after we'd reformed, we got offered to do this thing in it was at a holiday camp in Minehead. Right. And the guy said, will you come and do this? I went, I'm not going all that way, however far. It was a long way. You've got to remember we're in Newcastle. And he said, well, I'll give you a sleeper bus if you'll do it. And we went, oh, well, we've never had a sleeper bus. We've never done that. So the first...
You're a pushover.
Yeah. I'll do anything for a sleeper bus, hey? Really value yourself. Anyway, we agreed to do it. We thought we'll treat this as an adventure, and we took our kids, and our son was maybe, I don't know how old they were, 5, 7. Anyway, they knew nothing about us, but when the sleeper bus turned up, because they were coming on it, they were most impressed with the sleeper bus. And then they came to the gig, which was a punk gig. It was The Damned. It was... I can't remember who was on the bill, but it was a typical punk gig, and they stood at the side of the stage watching us, and they'd never seen us doing this. And the barrier at the front gave way, and all they can remember about that gig is that the audience outside, there was wooden picnic tables outside of the venue, and all they can remember is seeing lots of wooden picnic tables being passed through the crowd and put along the front as a barrier, so that was their introduction to us in music and a punk gig, basically.
But did this make them naturally curious about their mum? Have they gone back to and tried to find old YouTube footage of you and stuff like that? They haven't at all.
They're not that interested.
And they haven't read your book, is that right?
They've both got a copy, and I don't think they've read it yet, but perhaps when I die, they can find out all about it. But I don't know. It's there, isn't it? It's there, and
they will one day,
definitely
when the time is right.
It's definitely
yes.
there.
I mean, it takes a while to get round to reading a book. You've got to be in the mood. You do. It can sit there for a while and think, when am I going to read that?
So how do you look back on those days now? I mean, you're here tonight, and there's Glenn's here, and there's a picture of you with John Lydon and so forth. do you kind of look back at it like people who used to look back at the war or something and think that was very intense short period?
It's very strange that we're still sat here talking about it. I have to say, it must have had some massive effect to be sat here talking about that from all that time ago. Do you know what I mean? It must have had quite a big resonance.
Yeah.
In the atmosphere that can still resonate to sit here now all that time later. I mean, so I don't know.
Well, it's a big part of people's lives that if they were that age, they were going to see those bands. Also, it's become a big part of kind of, British pop culture, isn't it?
For something that was so hated, yes.
Finally, why the title of the book?
Well, it's the title of one of the songs, for starters, and because it's an autobiography, because people were saying, call it Don't Dictate, and I thought, no, I'm not going to do that. Because it's an autobiography and it's about my life, and I have taken a lot of gambles, everything I've done's been something that you just jump into or people wouldn't normally do. So I thought that was a much more appropriate title, Life's a Gamble, and it's a song of ours, so that's why I chose the title.
Right. Well, there's the book. It's a fantastic piece of work. It really is. It really
I'm
is.
delighted that you think that, because I've never written a book and done anything like it.
Absolutely loved it.
Yeah.
Really vivid and really, really moving.
And really
touching.
well presented as well.
Yeah.
That's the other thing, very strong pictures and so forth. Life's a Gamble. Please say thank you, Pauline Murray.
This podcast was brought to you by The Word.